This project actually came up, was started, I should say, about 5 years ago when the club, before my time, they went to a club trip in Aripo Savannas, and the club members, Mike, Stephen, Graham, a whole bunch of others, went to record the Herpetofauna found there. And in 2014 and 2015, when the Green Fund was sponsoring surveys there, not Herpetofauna, but other surveys, I tagged along and decided to incidentally record species that I saw there. So how this study is basically a combination of results from myself and the club members some 5 years ago, and in the end we provided an updated list of reptiles for the reserve. But of course, why is this important? If you're going to convince policymakers or general people to protect these species, you need to kind of convince them that they are important. So us naturalists could appreciate that they are important components of ecosystems. They feed on a variety of invertebrates and invertebrates, or they are preyed on by a variety of taxonomic groups. So, for example, the mapapy, which we are all very familiar with, feeds on a variety of different vertebrates, fishes, frogs, lizards, etc. And then there are frogs that feed on a variety of insects, such as mosquitoes. So imagine a world with more mosquitoes than rats. And if the ecosystem point of view isn't compelling enough to convince you of their importance, they are also important to humans in biomedical research. So for example, the paradoxical frog, seen here, found in Trinidad, studies have shown that chemicals in skin secretions are used to help treat diabetes. Now, globally, amphibians and reptiles are among the most threatened taxonomic groups compared to other vertebrate taxa. As many as 40% of amphibian species worldwide are threatened extinction. And at least 1 in 5 reptile species are threatened extinction worldwide. And the majority of these can be found here in the Neotropics, which is like South America, Central America, and the Caribbean, which also has the highest diversity, aside from Southeast Asia. Now, Trinidad and Tobago, our country, is found in the Neotropics, and we have 100 species of amphibians and reptiles. These consist of a variety of endemics and endangered species. And of course, some of the endemics include, well, I can no longer say the golden retriever, but there are other endemic species as well, luminous lizard, etc. And some of the endangered species can include the marine turtles, for example, which nest on Tobago and Trinidad shores. Now, these reptiles are found in protected areas and unprotected areas in Trinidad and Tobago. And one of the protected areas is the Aripo Savannas. However, there's been a lack of rigorous or published studies on the Herpetofauna in the Aripo Savannas. And basically, in 1988, a checklist of the species was produced, and this included 9 amphibian species, such as the medium tree frog, and 26 reptiles. And in 1997, 2 additional reptile species, including the spot nose gecko, was added to the list of species known to be from or within the Aripo Savannas. However, there hasn't been an updated list since, and this is 20 or 30 years. And if you're going to implement effective conservation management plans, you need to know what species there are there in the first place in order to better protect them. So, our aim was to provide an updated checklist of the amphibian and reptile species within the Aripo Savannas. And for those who may not be familiar, the Aripo Savannas, it's located in the northeast central region of Trinidad. It is roughly 1,800 hectares in size, and it is bordered by towns such as Valencia to the north, Sangre Grande to the southeast, Cumuto to the southwest, and then Waterfield to the western side there. It consists of a mosaic of different habitat types, and these is predominantly marsh forests intermingled with savannas. And these savannas are some of the last remaining natural savannas in Trinidad. That's why the Aripo Savannas is an area of conservation importance and designated one of the environmentally sensitive areas in Trinidad and Tobago. So basically what I did, and then what I did 5 years ago was that the members, we did visual and audio encounter surveys. So while within the Aripo Savannas, you're walking through the different habitats, searching the different microhabitats for species, whether in leaf litter, trees, or in puddles of water during the day and night, and in the rainy season and dry season. And of course, in the nighttime, frogs is where they more predominantly call. They have species-specific calls, like birds. So we recorded species that we saw and heard, and we documented that. And based on our combined pool results that we collected, we documented 19 amphibian species, and 10 of these were not previously documented for the Aripo Savannas, and 28 reptile species, which included 12 new reptile species for the Aripo Savannas. And this, of course, further highlights the need for this updated list. Since we've been asked to show photos to club members, I figured I'll just show this in the presentation one time. So these are just some of the species that I saw in the Aripo Savannas. And first off, we have the Garmin's tin-toed frog, which is very common. We have the narrow-mouthed frog, which feeds on ants and termites. This is the marsupial tree frog, and that on its back actually eggs. They're in a pouch, so the female carries the eggs on her back like that.
How big is that species?
It's actually not that big, it might be 2 centimeters for the longest. Yeah, they're really tiny. Very hard to spot. This is one of the commonest frogs we have here. This is the whistling frog, and it's feeding on what looks like an earthworm there. This was in the savannas. And going on to the reptile, this large coral, which was one of the species that wasn't previously reported for the Aripo Savannas, I happened to come across this twice. It's very, very pretty. Now, this isn't the same snake as before, but it's commonly called a water coral or hydrops. This was in a pool of water in the middle of the savanna, actually. This is the horsewhip. You can't see name, but he doesn't like his picture taken, but it's fairly honest.
Are you excited about his back?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. This is the multicolored lizard, or locally it's called a chameleon, because sometimes it can change its color to its background, more or less. So it'll have various colors from green to brown, depending. And the gallop, which is one of the freshwater turtles. This is only noticed during the wetter months. We hardly ever saw it in the dry months. Very hard to spot. And I don't know if you all know, if you can spot this, or you'll know what is in this picture here. Yeah, that's right.
Was that what he inside?
As Jeffrey said, it's a caiman, and the eyes is actually reflecting on the water. So that's to put all our results into perspective. Most of the new species we recorded, they have been cited as occurring in areas near the Aripo Savannas, or in like Sangre Grande, Valencia, etc., such as the water tree frog. However, 11 reptiles previously reported by Schwab and Murphy, we did not detect them during our surveys, such as the Bushmaster, though considering the very cryptic nature of reptiles, in particular snakes, it's not surprising that we didn't happen to come across them, but further research may confirm that whether they're still there or not. And because the Aripo Savannas consists of different mosaic of habitat types, it's important to document how these species are selecting their habitats and using their habitats for baseline conservation implications. So 43% were observed in marsh forests only, such as the leaf and old seen here, whereas more than half of the species were observed on ecotone areas. Ecotone areas are like on edges, so where the marsh forest meet the road edge, or where marsh forests met the savanna edge, we tend to find more than half the species here, such as the cane toad. And these may be considered more habitat generalists. However, in particular of concern, the habitat specialists are for conservation also. So I've highlighted these 11 species because they are also of particular conservation importance. Firstly, the two frogs, the Euryx frog seen here and the marsupial frog seen before, are both listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List. And these 5 reptiles are exploited by humans either through hunting or the pet trade. So the first 3, the iguana, marten, caiman, are legally and unfortunately illegally hunted in Trinidad. And whereas the 2 turtles have been known to be sold in the pet trade. Now the populations of these species may exhibit reduced levels of stress because of the protected status of the Aripo Savannas. So it would be, noteworthy to look at whether population of these species in a protected area and compare them to an unprotected area and see if, the Aripo Savannas really is serving its purpose as a protected area. So,
Colonel, do you get more koi in these savannas?
I know they were previously listed in Schwab's list, but I haven't seen them. I know they're still there or not. So it's a very short presentation. But to conclude, 10 new amphibian species and 12 new reptile species for the Aripo Savannas, not new to the country or to science as yet. Further research is needed as more species can be documented and you can better protect the certain species there. And of course, just to highlight again, you need to know what species there are in the area in order to better protect them and better put forward conservation management plans. So, again, research is needed. Just to acknowledge that Stella and John, we sort of put together our results and co-authored a paper, which should be in Living World 2015. We'd like to thank the Forestry Division as Wildlife Section for issuing permits, Field Naturalist members helping us out, Museum, of course, and the Green Fund, who didn't pay me, but they did sponsor these surveys in 2014 and 2015, which I was able to volunteer and come along and put forward this study. And that's pretty much the end of the presentation.
So you're going to floor to questions. So, Renoir.
So when you go on the overnight, will we see anything?
Well, I thought the timing of my presentation was good for that free club trip as well. So yeah, so it's a good opportunity for the club trip to look out for these species and you have a better idea of what to look out for and hopefully identify. And
How regularly is so not being there?
very regular actually. It was the most common snake I saw in the What 32 nights I saw 6 different amphibians on 6 different nights across the whole reserve, so they were not the same snake either.
But these of course were limited to the forest plants, right?
They were in the savannah as well. Yeah, in the savannah. Yeah, a small dream.
Have you got a tabulation of the frogs calling at night over, say, 2 or 3 years? And if so, have you noticed a drop off in the number of species you're hearing?
I haven't really looked into that per se, but I think that's something that would be noted.
I think it's very important because, as I mentioned the club a while ago, when I moved into my house in the valley, I recorded 8 species of frogs.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 weeks, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing calling.
Yeah.
And with the first rains in the dry season, usually I'll have one starts to call.
Yeah.
And the place is silent. Occasionally during the day, you'll hear the little monoframe.
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, it's quite frightening.
It is a concern.
Because actually, Johnson and I seem to be able to defy all things. There's one calling in a drain in St. James where they motivate cells. We've been calling it for years in St. James. And they come into my yard and they disappear. Right?
Yeah.
So something's either eating them or they're succumbing to some environmental problem that's in the area generally.
Well, hopefully it's not the chytrid fungus.
It could be that. It could be something else that, because they're the canaries in the mine shaft of our life these days. So it would be interesting to see whether there's an effect in the bush as there is in the city.
Perhaps it could be the climate as well, because 2015 was recorded as the hottest year. And of course, amphibians in particular are very sensitive to environmental factors such as temperature, humidity, rainfall.
Agreed.
So,
but 98 and 99, Fernayas, Peñalosa call, And that's a call you can't miss. Jeffrey and I went into a chorus of those in Chaguaramas one night, and it was deafening.
It's an invisible frog. Can't be seen.
No, that's not it.
No,
That's
wrong.
the one that sort of sounds like a drunken goat.
Yeah, that's it.
The ones?
Yeah? Renoir.
Oh, right, yeah, when you go slow, yeah.
How loud.
Yeah.
I think it's a piece of vegetation that goes. You can look the frog there.
Is it very, very tiny?
No, it's
No,
not.
this is
The
small.
The one you're talking about is Johnson, a little tiny piece of bit.
Tiny, tiny. You can't see it, but it's low, low.
Right. This is a goat that goes like this. Pardon my vocal.
Yeah.
Like
It's
that.
very low.
Yes, and the whole air is full of it
Yeah.
when they're calling.
And it can't be seen.
No, those are. That's Renoir. No, well, I don't know. That's the name I know. It used to be.
It was Friday Highlands venue also, but it's trying. It's
It's got the Typhonius now.
Yeah,
It was something else before.
it's
Has that fungus actually been recorded here?
It
Has
has.
it been?
It has. It's in Trinidad and Tobago. It's been recorded there. Any manner of frying, anyways. But I don't know about any other species. Yeah, like 2013. So Jason, I think, did this study.
The Schwab list was done in what year?
1988.
Do you think, I mean, Aripo is an area that you're covering ever since the occupiers have left. Do you think that with the recovery of the area, well, in some parts, is there any change over in the species that you're finding? Because you say some species are now not being found, while new species are being found in the area.
Well, I mean, we don't know exactly the method that Schwab didn't use to say whether or not, it was a rigorous test or not, whether these species are still there or not. But, I mean, in most studies, you would naturally have an underestimate, I would think, depending on rapid assessments anyways. So, it's hard to say.
You just have results, no method.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for the Schwabs, yeah.
For the morphoids, there are yellow-footed predators in the Aripo Savanna, okay, as well as anacondas as well. But in some of those we see often, few times in 8 years. Now, but sadly, however, the Aripo Savanna, as everybody knows, lots of fires take place there. And when these fires come, sadly, the morphoids are one of the first casualties. We have to pick up our coins and then after a fire you walk through and then what is easy as a shell. Everything is bone clean. Okay. What is going to happen? Sometimes when the ponds and dry so much, caimans especially, they actually move instead of walking across from one area to the next. I think something we told that something can be happening with actually dig into the mud and keep there for some time. That's what it's.
Alright, cool, man.
You said that most of the species were found in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Have been asked in microbes. How about the open society? Are there any species?
Right, so we have species in the savannas, but none can be considered specialists because they were also found in the marsh forest as well. So no species might be considered a savanna specialists per se. So like the Fuscus, whistling frog was in the savannas, but they were also in the marsh forest as well. So we counted them as, as both habitat types.
Excuse me. Do you remember if Schwab's list included Neotropics?
Yeah.
Have you seen Neotropics?
I haven't, no.
Well, that's a really rare lizard.
It is. I've hardly ever.
You never come across it?
I've never come across it actually.
Right.
I think so. People from American University, they came here for 3 or 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, and they did some of their tours in the bunkers in the Aripo Savanna at night. And I think they have their contacts already.
Okay.
So very interesting.
All right, well, if that's it, we don't have time for a mouthful coming out of this side.